There it is. Great. So we are recording. I want to, well, I guess thank you all for being here today. And we have a pretty big group. Let's take a quick look. We have about 28 people. Wow, that's so awesome. And welcome everybody. Glad you're here. So we're going to get started with the training and hope that we can move through this pretty quickly. There's a lot of cool things, and I'm sure there'll be lots of great questions, and I want to give time for a bit of conversation. My dad is even here, so you all know, listening in. Okay, so I'll give you a quick intro. I think I know everybody, but I know there's a couple new IMSite leaders that have joined, and so I don't know if they're here tonight or not. So I can do a quick, oh yeah, this thing. I have to figure, there we go. Quick intro, just in case, and then we'll go into a bit of the Park Authority quickly, and then go into the breakdown of herbicide use. But so just my background really quickly, I worked for Reston Association for 10 years. I have a master's in environmental science and policy from George Mason, and went to work at Eleanor C. Lawrence Park for almost 2 years there, working with volunteers, doing trail work, supporting meadow and habitat, managing invasive species, and then came over to the IMA program. That's where I took this cool photo of this beautiful box turtle, where we were supporting jet work over by the Accotink Stream Valley behind the Costco. So really quickly, the Park Authority is the largest landowner here in Fairfax County, and about 73% of it is undeveloped. So that's like 17,000 acres of parkland. And this map is showing us the highest quality to lowest quality parkland here. And a lot of it is invasive species. So we're constantly working on that. And so thanks to all you IMSite leaders who are here today. Grateful for all those volunteers who work with volunteers, who support volunteers and support managing invasive species. Glad that for all that you do, and grateful for the time and dedication and passion that you put into supporting and protecting the natural areas. I'm really grateful for that. And this is a partnership, of course, with working with volunteers and working with crews and the Park Authority. And we do this work, of course, to support wildlife and managing invasive species so that we can support every being on this planet. And I start with well, giving a bit of care to the idea that we are doing and using herbicides with the caring of Mother Nature in mind. And so when we are using herbicide, we want to be the most careful. We know that pesticides and herbicides have their impact on the natural systems. And so if we can minimize that, the better we can treat our earth and the water. So this goes quickly into the licenses and the things we need to do to be certified applicators. And so the Park Authority staff have certified applicators, certified commercial applicators, not for hire. And we highly recommend that you go through some training as if you were to become a registered technician, and that's what hopefully this is going to help provide. And ideally, you would take into reading one of the registered technician or commercial applicators books, and you can find information here on the VDAC's website. Virginia Tech Extension has the books to buy or borrow. So yes, what are pesticides? Insecticides, herbicides, rodenticides, molluscicides, repellents, disinfectants, and sanitizers, and fungicides. And I hope I said those all correctly. So on our containers, I like having this little frowny face guy, because on our containers, we want to make sure that we have this sort of like, frowny face with the tongue sticking out, because it's sort of like the language, the image that speaks 1,000 words, right? So use this on your containers, and if it's not already on there when you receive any of the containers, or any containers you might move into, any herbicides you might move into a new container, if you have any new container, if you would please use this image and write something like, chemical use only from now on. I believe, yeah, all I wanted to say about that for now. Categories. So we have various categories here in Virginia that we need to get if we're going to be using herbicides on land. And our certification is for forest pest control, though I've always pondered whether ornamental pest control is also a relevant or a category that we should have certification in. And of course, aquatic pest control is another one, since we do treat aquatic systems and use but we use contractors for that purpose. So ideally, we would have that certification if we were going to be doing any work near, stream valleys near the water. And the herbicides that we do use are certified for use in aquatic environments, and so is herbicide used by our contractor. Of course, the label is the law. So we will be providing everybody with a label of each herbicide or the herbicide that you're going to be using. And any container on which the herbicide is in should have information of the label as well. And so if that label were to fall off on the container that you are using, please let us know and obtain a new label to attach and use something temporary if you can't get to us quickly, because it is the law to have a label on any container in which any sort of pesticide is contained in. And here are the signal words that you would have on these containers. So caution for pesticide application, and caution or precaución en español is low toxicity level. And so those are the ones that we would use for the herbicides that we will be providing to you. The herbicides we use are not high toxicity level, so we don't have things like warning or danger, peligro, things like that. PPE, we were going to be providing you the minimum PPE. And I say minimum because you can always expand on what protective equipment you use for your personal safety. For instance, I like to use a mask so that I can prevent myself from inhaling herbicides as I'm mixing herbicides or applying foliar spray, because the particles of the pesticide may volatilize, and you may be exposed to them as you're breathing it in. So anytime like you're smelling the chemical, basically, I interpret that as actually inhaling any sort of volatile organic compounds from the pesticide or herbicide you're using. So we will provide chemical safe gloves, these nice green ones that are long. And so your sleeve should be inside the glove and the glove above and over, and then the lip be folded up so that if there's a drip for any reason, there shouldn't be because you're using a buckthorn blaster. If there's any reason that it would drip, you make a little cuff so that it's caught in that little space. Protective glasses, a hat, long sleeves. Ideally, you're wearing some form of impermeable shoes like hiking boots. Long pants and long sleeves, very important. So here's some of the masks that I have worn in the past when I'm doing mixing. For instance, I use the one on the left that have the filters, and those was fitted to my face. This is just my personal preference. It is not part of the legal PPE that is listed on the label. And then sometimes even just like a mask could work too. So here's the different types of tools that we have for using our herbicide. Of course, there's multiple ways of managing invasive species. Ideally, we are emphasizing the use of manual removal, but there comes a point when you need the herbicide. So backpack sprayers, handheld sprayers are not something we will be providing at this time, because this is the pilot. We're the first to do this, and we want to take the highest precaution possible. So for the time being, the buckthorn blaster, woody cuts of woody plants is what we're going to be narrowing down to for the time being. So there's different types though. So just to give you some background, there are people here who might be trying to get their certification as a registered technician or certified applicator. So this information can help support this person as they're working through that exam studying. So types of herbicide, we have selective herbicide, we have non-selective herbicide. So selective herbicide are those more specific herbicides, more specific for woody, more specific for grass, for instance, which I've heard are pretty toxic, and I do not like to be around them if I don't have to be. There's woody specific, so that's your Garlon, your Ultra, those are amines, the active chemical or amine, or gosh, the word just escaped me. Anastasia, do you remember that? Amines or esters. Esters, got it. Yay. And so that's the Garlon, Ultra Garlon 4-Ultra or Garland 3A, and those are specific for woody plants. So if you're out and about in a meadow, for instance, you're going to try to kill a woody plant, that's a really great one. You can see here in the image, they're using one of those most likely in a horticultural oil with a dye and applying it to the trunk. This is called a basal bark treatment there. And so then the idea there is that the oil holds a chemical and the chemical is then absorbed into the underneath the bark, and it's taken up and down through the liquids of the xylem and the phloem, going up and down into the root system, into the leaves. All my language working here today. Scientific terminology has always been a challenge for me as an English language learner. That's my excuse anyways. So we have also then the non-selective, right? Your glyphosate, which is the common chemical in Roundup, for instance, and that can kill anything. And so it can be used for anything. And that is what it is what we're going to be putting into our buckthorn blasters at a high concentration for woody control. So types of herbicide then is the systemic or contact herbicide, like vinegar. Contact herbicide you can spray on the top, it'll kill the top leaf, but it won't really go into the root system or kill it that way. And I love this photo of trees because it shows the expanse of those root systems and what we're working with when we're in the forest. So the systemic herbicides moves into those root system and moves internally through the plant, is absorbed by the cells of the leaves, and is transported down through the tree to the root system. So backpack sprayer, great for 1% herbicide, glyphosate to kill stiltgrass. Smallest amount is all you need for that plant. And we're fortunate to be able to do some of that work in our high quality forests to try to protect them from invasion. It's a lot of chemical though, so it's a big project to try to manage stiltgrass, and it's amazing we can have volunteers doing that manually. So here you have the dauber that we're going to be using, drip, and the small spray bottles. So if there ever comes a time where we are able to move forward to support, let's say, celandine treatments at certain sites, or other foliar or other plants that need a foliar treatment for management that the buckthorn blaster isn't working, that is something we are planning to consider in the future after this pilot project is cleared, in a sense. Herbicide application, of course, needs a lot of consideration before we do it. And in this image, we're looking at the things that we need to consider. So the drift in the air, are we going to have a windy day? If you're using a foliar application, you do not want to be spraying at that time. Are there threats of rain or, drainage systems moving through the area where we're working? Or are we going to be treating in an area near impermeable surfaces? And so considering those things as we're applying herbicide. With buckthorn blaster, there's a lot less to consider, of course, because the way that application is done, you're really just treating the direct stem that you've cut. And so you do not have sort of an overspray possibility or real spillage. There's potential if your buckthorn blaster leaks, when the sponge tip bottle starts to get damaged a little bit, there is a potential that more of it may come out than you actually need. And so being careful with that is really important. As you're working through, those sponge tip bottles the sponge tends to wear down rather rapidly, especially if the way you're daubing could be a little bit of rubbing as you're moving around the stump or something. And so we will provide extras, but just something to be cautious of as you're working through. So some other considerations here listed, of course, is like the human interaction, working around areas where there may be active insects like bees or other animals at the time. Like if you're near a field, we're going to ask you to put up signs, which we'll provide. If you're working along a trail, for instance, if people are walking dogs, we know people love to let their dogs walk off trail. So we're going to be putting up signs in those situations, or you will when there's a need. Of course, here listing, important to be careful of for offsite plants, the plants that are sensitive, that you do not want to treat. So we'll go into some more detail here about mixing. And you will not be doing any mixing, good thing. We will take care of all the mixing for you and provide the bottles ready for you to go, because we want to be sure that these sort of more challenging, potentially risky situations are in our hands and in our responsibility. And I love the picture at the top, because here you see a guy wearing the great chemical gloves. But if I could pause, could anybody tell me what else is going on here that we put an X around that you need to be aware of? That's not right in that photo at the top left. Anybody can take themselves off speaker or put it in the chat.
His arms are exposed.
Yeah, so no long sleeves. Great. Anything else?
Gloves aren't folded back at the top. He's doing it outside, balanced on rocks. And
Yeah.
if it spills, it's going to fall on living critters.
Totally. Exactly. Anything else? One other really obvious thing. I'm like, I just noticed that.
I don't see any labels on those containers.
That's it. Ding, ding, ding. Great. Thank you, everybody. So lots of things to consider as we're working through these mixing and making sure we have everything we need set up for proper work. And we will be doing that and showing these things in person when we meet on the 15th or a following day, I think will be March 1st. So mix only the amount of herbicide you need for that work day. So those buckthorn blasters are 4 ounces. You'll be able to keep that and use that for as long as you need. Check the calculations, of course, as we're mixing. We do a lot of verifying the ounces per container, per gallon, per ounce, or ounces per ounces that we need to make so that we're going to have the concentration that we need. So for woody plants, we usually only need about a 25% glyphosate concentration. However, because we understand that there may be the opportunity for doing trees or treating trees such as Tree of Heaven or Bradford Prayers, maybe like that, like was mentioned at the annual appreciation event, there may be an opportunity to do like a squeeze into a hack on a larger invasive tree. And you could still do that with the buckthorn blaster. So we're going to provide a higher percentage, straight percentage, really, what we get from the gallon for that purpose so that it's effective. So label everything for mixing and storage. I reset that, and then applying record the application. So we're going to be asking you to fill out forms so that you will be recording how many ounces approximately you have spent at a certain location at a certain time, and making sure that that is recorded is really extremely important because that is also part of the law. And so you're helping us keep within our parameters as you're working on the parkland. Types of applications. So we have a great spreadsheet that Rita Peralta, who is one of our ecologists, has helped to update and improve as to the percentages of herbicide needed for different types of treatment for specific species. And of course, it all depends on the timing as well. As you can see in the middle with the green, those are the months. And it's really important to consider the months of the year when we are applying herbicide and the types of treatment we apply. Because, for instance, the buckthorn blaster, the cut stump treatment can only be treated during the summer, fall, and winter months, because in the spring, our plants are shooting up their energy and to create leaves. And so many times, my own experience, I did this with bamboo once and autumn olive, where you cut it in the spring and you try to apply herbicide to it, and it just kind of washes it away. Basically, the liquids, it's just shooting it up out of the plant, and so it's not effective. In the fall, the plant, of course, is sending its nutrients into the root system and will absorb the chemical. So the timing for this work is a little bit off, where you're going to be receiving the equipment and you'll have a really short window to do some cut stump treatment until, again, the fall. So hack and squirt, as I mentioned earlier, is one of the methods of treatment for killing woody plants, especially larger woody plants. And it is ideally done without completely girdling the plant, like you see here on the left lower photo. Ideally, what you're doing is you're making a hack, leaving some bark intact, and then doing another hack, and then leaving some bark intact. And then you apply the herbicide. And the way you hack it or cut it, ideally you're leaving also a little bit of a lip so that the chemical can sit in that space and be absorbed by the tree. It doesn't require a chainsaw to work, so that makes it really easily a very preferred method when you're working far into the forest. And then, of course, it allows the trunks to be left for wildlife, which is could be beneficial. And the basal bark treatment we've already mentioned, and this goes a little bit into detail. So when you want to apply the basal bark treatment, you're going from the ground up about 18 inches and completely covering the trunk with the oil and herbicide mixture, and can be applied in the winter as well. So foliar application, as you can see here, you are spraying using a backpack sprayer or handheld sprayer. And you're ideally not spraying over your head like the photo on the right. Another error. Photo showing mistaken methods of applying. Oh, if you could, I'm sorry, getting a message. I can't seem to access the meeting from Kristen. Oh no. Okay, I will have to send her. She may be able to join us in the next one. I missed the message. Kristen? So don't apply over your head when you're doing herbicide, but that is a big multiflora row somebody wanted to kill, which they could have done a cut stump treatment for. So then we do herbicide use for protecting trees as well. And I was fortunate to get to witness the Department of Public Works and Environmental Services, now called Urban and Community Forestry team, doing an herbicide or an insecticide application for the hemlock trees to protect them from the hemlock woolly adelgid. Really cool work. And they also use a basal bark treatment or injections or a pour into the soil around the trees. So for any spills, you will receive a small spill kit, and that spill kit will contain some of these pig mats or very thick sort of paper towel material, and a few other pieces of materials or tools that you could use for a small spill, which we don't think will happen, but you never know. So we want to have you be prepared. You'll also receive a bucket in which the materials and your tools that you're using with herbicides and the buckthorn blaster will be kept in, and hopefully you will contain it in that space. And ideally, any tool that is being used at the same time as you're applying a chemical, let's say you have your chemical gloves on, you're out on your own in the field and you're using your buckthorn blaster, that tool you will then consider, your pesticide or herbicide tool, and that's what's going to be kept with the bucket or kept separately from the rest of the tools so that nobody touches it with bare hands or, even just work gloves, because you don't want to have the contamination. So you can pick a couple tools, a saw, clipper, lopper, whatever, and say, these are my designated herbicide tools that I will only, or anybody will only use with chemical gloves. So if there is a spill, of course, please immediately notify your supervisor, who is currently Anastasia Mejia, if you would let her know immediately. And a spill legally is really meant, and according to the language, is really those spills that could negatively impact the environment or the people or, other wildlife. And so a buckthorn blaster has 4 ounces. If that spills outside, it's really not going to impact people or wildlife or health because it's a small amount, unless it's on a impervious surface near a drain, for instance. Then you would want to take action, absorb as much as you can, throw it away in the trash bag and in the trash as a method of removal. So if we were to have a massive spill where there was a major, risk, then those are the cases in which we would report also to VDACs. So proper storage, of course, we are going to be providing you that bucket that's sealed. That's a sealable bucket. We ask that if it's possible for you to store it outdoors, like in a shed or outside of your home, somewhere separate from your house, your garage perhaps, should be fine. If you don't have a garage, perhaps out on your balcony, somewhere outside, not inside your home because of the potential volatility. Transportation, if you are driving your chemicals from one place to the other, it's inside your car. Ideally, you have your windows open. If not, it's in the back of your cab, outside of the cab in the truck bed. And I have an image here of those great boot brushes. I think because I wanted to make a note that this is a great way to prevent the spread of seeds. I'm not sure why it's in this slide. I'm sorry. Of course, we have a nice image here to show about not pouring anything down a drain, making sure we're staying away from drains. I've seen people, that we just want to make sure we educate our community about those things and doing this properly. So then quickly, I have these slides about priority species for our invasives work, because I was doing this presentation for our crews here at the Fairfax County Park Authority who were interested in managing invasive species in the parkland. they have a lot of work to do out there. So I'm hopeful that they'll also learn how to use herbicides and manage, big autumn olives or bush honeysuckles along a trail, for instance. So with the buckthorn blaster, we mentioned this during the all appreciation event, and ideally what you would be doing here is applying the herbicide to the perimeter of the trunk that you have cut. And then as you can see here in the lower bottom right, if you have small stems, you're applying the herbicide completely to the entire stump. I did mention that if it's a vine, for instance, it would be best if you were to apply it completely to the entire vine, especially if it was a big vine. We have Mahonia, other plants that you can do cut stump treatments to. The cut stump treatment is really important to apply within a minute of cutting the plant. Minute, 30 seconds, a minute, 2 minutes. Like the sooner the better you're applying the herbicide as soon as it's cut. So if you're working with a large group, for instance, and they're cutting bittersweet vines or autumn olive or bush honeysuckle for you, and you have a pretty decent sized group, you're asking them to sort of cut near you so that you can move towards them as they're done, and they call you over and you apply the herbicide, and you have multiple sites to go to or if you have multiple volunteers cutting for you, those are the sorts of tricky situations where you want them to sort of give you the timing of, hey, let me know as soon as you've cut it, and then I'll follow up, and then you let me know after, so that so one cut isn't sitting there for more than a minute without having the herbicide applied to it. That makes sense. Porcelain bear, another great one to apply herbicide to. Here you can see an image of how we would apply the herbicide to an English ivy vine. Without cutting the entire vine off, we're cutting at the bottom there and then applying the herbicide to the part of the vine that is going down towards the ground. And so we would then let that stay without pulling it out of the ground, because the herbicide will be absorbed into the root system there. Garlic mustard, not a woody plant. Multiflora rose is a great one to do custom treatments if you can leave most of the materials there, if it's possible, and not having to deal with all those thorns. So these go into some EDRR species, and that is it. Any questions? I will stop sharing. That was pretty quick, and I went through a lot of details there. So let's see, I have Margaret Fisher.
Yeah, I was wondering if I'm working in a group, and let's say they're all doing roses, can I have them cut it a little high and then I'll come by and cut it lower?
Yep, that's another great way of doing it.
Okay.
Yeah, especially because it's a rose, you want all that material taken out, and they can do that. And yep.
Does it need to be applied to each cane?
Yes. I would say so. So that is one of the things that we need to consider too, because a buckthorn blaster, when you're applying that, the amount of chemical that's being transported from that sponge tip bottle into the plant isn't too much, right? It's high concentration, and that's why we have it high concentration, but it isn't that much liquid. And so if you have a very large multiflora rose patch, or multi-stemmed autumn olive, applying it to the multiple stems is a key to making sure that it's getting enough chemical through those root systems to kill it. You can always, do as much as you can. Sometimes it's so many stems, you're just like, I'm going to have to come back and check if this thing is still alive later and do another quick treatment. That's a possibility. Nick?
Yeah, could you quickly go back to the calendar
Sure.
with the timing for the applications?
Yeah, and we can share that too if people are interested. That is a really great resource.
So my question is about how to interpret it. So with the autumn olive, there's the dark green and the light green. And my experience, and based off what you said, it would be good to treat it from like June to maybe early March or something. And I'm just not sure how to read it on this particular graph chart.
Yeah, I'm looking at that now too. Let's see. So June, July, August, September, October, November, December. Oh, it doesn't even have December, January, February in there as the darker green. That's so funny. Yeah, so this is really old. And I don't remember who made it, and we do need to update it. But so I think ideally it is that those summer months into the fall and the winter, I think why it's green, at least for the winter months, I don't know about the spring. I think that's misinformation really, but I think is because if in the winter you can do cut stem treatment as long as the ground is not frozen. And, I think the closer you get to the spring months, February, March, you could risk even January, like sometimes here in this area, you can risk the plant being so active, So perhaps that's why it's green, but that's my interpretation of that.
Okay, so I guess what I'm hearing is like at some point you'll go through and kind of update this. And is the dark green the preferred, light green is it's sort of okay, and
Yep.
white is it's not a good time?
Correct. That's correct.
Okay. Yeah, because I've also cut, autumn olive or bush honeysuckle and seeing like green chlorophyll colored liquid coming up before.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, no, that's not a good time. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, thanks for asking that. Whitney,
Yeah, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, two quick questions. One is how, I'm thinking of the English ivy that I was cutting recently, and it's one of those things where it's just an awkward angle to get in there, blah, 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 really thick vine. So all I could do was cut straight across and then down at an angle. So it's like as almost a wedge shape. And so in that case, if the top and the bottom pieces are at all connected, even through the little rootlets, I wondered if the herbicide would still be effective going down into the roots. It wouldn't necessarily. Is that wedge the picture you showed had like a real interruption, and sometimes which you can only do like what's the
Right.
how do you know you're getting it right when you've got these weird angles on thick vines sometimes? And the second quick question is how
Like,
long does it take
Mhm.
for you to come back and see if it's taken if it's done the job, like you were
Good
talking about
questions.
multiflora rows?
Right. Yeah, good questions. So yeah, so I think what I want to understand is like you're saying is sometimes it's really hard to get enough of a surface area to then apply the herbicide. Yeah, I mean, even sometimes it's hard to get the buckthorn blaster at the right angle to get the herbicide to cover the entire trunk. Is that what the question is?
Yeah, like
Yeah,
I mean, for
exactly.
example, when you've got awkward situations in the field, what's the very least you need to make sure you've done with the cut so that it will be effective?
That's a good question. I think we want to apply as much as you can to the entire surface and allow it to be absorbed by the plant, and so that you can see it has been absorbed. And even like for a very like some of the larger stems, like I want to make sure I'm getting enough liquid in there, so I'm going to go around it a couple times. And so in those areas where they're really hard to reach, it's sort of like the idea of the hack and squirt, where you're trying to squeeze and dab as much as you can, so you have enough liquid in the area, so that the plant then absorbs that liquid. So as as much as possible, really, that's really all I can say, like covering that surface area as much as possible.
Thanks.
And completely.
And then how long till I go back or whatever? And in the case of multiflora?
So in the case of multiflora, so it depends, I guess, also when you're doing the treatment, right? So like if I were to do it now, I'd have to wait till the spring, right, to know if it actually killed it.
Got it.
So, but in the summer months, I mean, a couple of weeks, usually we can determine if the plant has completely died. Some plants take a little bit longer to show us that they have completely wilted away or died, like English ivy, for instance. It can take a month for some plants to completely wither away from the herbicide. So I would say anywhere between 2 weeks and a month.
Thanks.
Thank you. Great questions. Greg?
Hi, I have a couple of questions. First, with the gloves, how well do they hold up against thorns? Because a lot of the places where we work are going to have thorns, whether they're targeted Himalayan blackberry or they're the ubiquitous greenbrier.
Yeah, that's a great question. They are pretty tough. They're heavy duty gloves. So they're how many milliliters? I can't remember how many milliliters, but there's they're quite sturdy. They're not like your thin nitrile or like work gloves. And so you don't have a lot of what's the word? I can't remember the word when you have textile, like your hands can't do as many little detailed things. So they're pretty sturdy, but there's always the chance, especially with greenbrier and multiflora rose. So Ideally, we'll give everybody a couple pair of gloves or one that you can wash and reuse. But if, I guess we have to determine that if we should have 2 pairs of gloves for each person or not. That's a detail we didn't consider in case there's a tear. But I think for now, I trust that they're pretty sturdy. I think 1 pair, ideally with the gloves, and I didn't talk about this earlier, and so thank you for bringing that up, is you would be washing the gloves, the chemical gloves, and hanging them to dry and reusing them if they get to that point of where they need the wash or you had a sweaty day, that sort of thing.
Is there any consideration of like wearing a thinner nitrile glove on your bare hands and wearing a fence mender glove, which is supposed to be resistant to pokes? You're supposed to hang barbed wire with it and using that as the exterior protection and a chemical protection as well. So you've got 2 layers. Anything like that?
You are welcome to use more PPE. That is up to each individual person. And the only thing I would just, any other gloves you're using, just as long as they're impermeable, they're not going to be absorbing chemical. But you're welcome to use more PPE on top of what is it required.
And what was the percentage of glyphosate that's going to be in these bottles?
It's going to depend on the bottle that we purchase, but they're typically around, and Anastasia, correct me if I'm wrong, but they're typically between like 48 and 52 or something like that is usually the typical, percentage of glyphosate in one of our concentrated bottles that we purchase.
And also about, is it going to have refills? Or are we just going to have one bottle and just not be able to open that?
We will refill those bottles. Ideally what we're going to be doing is having a cabinet that you will have access to through a code. And when your bottle is done, you can request a new one. We can drop it off, or you can come and pick it up and open the cabinet and grab what you need from there. If you need extra gloves, that sort of thing, we'll have those extra PPE available in there as well.
I also saw a comment up about nitrile gloves not protecting against thorns. And yes, the idea is that the fence mender gloves would be the protector against thorns. But then as you're taking off these gloves, you don't want the chemicals to come on the exterior of those gloves to come into contact with you. That's why you would have the secondary nitrile gloves to protect as you take the as you de-gown per se. Also too, Margaret made a comment that was about cutting the material back into reasonable sizes. I personally had bamboo in my yard, and I don't like using herbicides, but I had to use glyphosate to get rid of the bamboo. And I found what really worked was having 2 people doing this. I would first go and cut everything down to about 3 feet, and then have one person cutting the bamboo canes down to ground level, and then I would then apply the herbicide. So one person was relatively clean with a knife or saw, and I was chemically contaminated with my hands. Now I know this is not a bamboo IMA program, correct? That's separate. We're just going after regular IMA targets, and bamboo is not part of that, correct?
Correct. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Patricia?
Yes.
Jerry Peters. I want to ask you a question about the future. I understand this first year is going to be a pilot, and we're just going to use the glyphosate in the buckthorn blaster. Now, I'm not trying to change anybody's mind, but can you prognosticate when we might be able to use other herbicides, particularly for stiltgrass?
I cannot say.
Okay.
I
Understand.
mean, it's a pilot project. A pilot you want to do for a minimum of a year, I would imagine. Get a gist of things. Things might move faster than that. I'm not sure. I think we have to gauge things, the safety of things, how if people are logging their hours, they're logging their use of herbicide, all these things I want to consider to feel comfortable to move forward. But yes, so that's really.
Yeah, we need to get some experience just doing this with volunteers. I understand that, but Okay, yeah, but I'm hoping somebody at the park authority is thinking, well, what about the future? When do we open up the other options that you mentioned about controlling plants?
Yes. Yeah.
Enough. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for asking. And Bill Canis?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
I had a couple of questions. What is the difference between the buckthorn blaster that we're using and commercial Roundup?
Oh, so the buckthorn blaster will have straight so the commercial Roundup has additives and other things that are not certified for use in aquatic environments. And the container that we will be purchasing is an herbicide mixture that is certified for use in aquatic environments. And that's really the major difference, as well as the fact that what you buy at the stores is a low concentration glyphosate, and we're going to be using a high concentration glyphosate for the cut stump treatment.
I see. And that's because we will be using daubers exclusively,
Exclusively, yes.
and they will have that higher concentrated glyphosate. I can't say that word, but you know
Glyphosate.
whatever that word is.
Yeah.
I see. And what is my other question is, the ratio that you think is appropriate between the volunteers and the person who's doing the chemical treatments. So, for example, I was on a Riverbend um, uh, invasives visit in the fall, and I think there were 4 of us, and there was just one person who was Fairfax County Park Authority employee who was certified to do the daubing. And of course, with 4 people cutting bush honeysuckle, it became, it becomes, I don't want to say it's chaotic, but somebody might cut 5 or 6 of them. And well, the applicator is daubing them 20 feet away, some other ones. And by the time he gets done there, oh, gee, where are those branches that have been cut? So,
yeah, each person who
so-
cuts has to stay with their cut.
So I'm just thinking if one of
Yeah.
our parks, we had, for example, at the Grange where Jerry Peters has worked a lot, sometimes as many as 10 or 15 volunteers.
Yeah.
It wouldn't seem that one person daubing could possibly ever keep up with those who are doing the cutting, or the people doing the cutting would have to go so slowly that there would be limited progress during the day. So what is the desired ratio to be effective and not have people wasting their time there that day, either because we're telling the people that are doing the cutting to stop cutting because they're doing too much, and the dauber can't keep up with it. So I just
Yeah.
wondered what's your experience with that
That's a
ratio?
great question. And that's something that each person will have to determine in their each scenario, and I think that's a really good point. And Margaret mentioned, the cut higher so that they can keep moving and removing debris and cutting more. And then you come up afterwards and do a recut and then apply. But of course, when you have a really large stem, that doesn't make much sense, because it's going to take yourself a while to cut one and then apply. And so then, you're going afterwards. And so that is what may take IMACITE leaders a little bit more time post or pre another event, or, working alongside what volunteers are doing something else. But yeah, that is going to be a bit of a challenge for now, since only IMACITE leaders are permitted to use the buckthorn blaster. It is going to be a bit restrictive, but it doesn't mean that people can't remove invasives that day. But yeah, like you said, like cutting a larger stem, having somebody there to do the sawing work, it could take a while. And so then it may be something that you have to come post work day or pre another work day the following time or something like that. And you can only do what you can do. And so a lot of what I've done is working with like scouts, for instance. I had, it was like I don't know, 4, 5, 6 of them cutting, and then the others were removing the debris, stacking it up, bagging it. And so I could follow, they would call me because the dabbing does go pretty quick in comparison to the cutting and, you know, removing. So you can work like two to three people to one dauber, and you're just like going. But those people who are cutting have to show you, say, wait there until they move to the next one, and then they move to the next one, and other people are moving. So it kind of, you tag team it. It does tend to work out, but you're right. Like if you have a very large group, they'll be cutting and leaving and removing. And what we have done in the past is we've applied a spray paint to the stumps prior to our volunteers coming and doing it. And so that might be another step. If you know that you're going to be having a really large group, we can provide a spray paint can, like white spray paint. And so then those stumps are then standing out to you and you don't lose them in the debris and whatnot, and can go back to them and do the cut stump treatment at a later time. That's another strategy.
So in some instances in the past, we have deemed it valuable to have a large number of volunteers turn out for an invasives removal where we're not using any herbicides, of course. But it seems that in this instance of this case where there may be one of us doing the daubing, that an ideal day is not to have a huge throng, but have a more targeted group and say cut it off at 5 or 6 people, so that it's more manageable. It would be a reversal of what our usual. We're delighted when 20 people show up, but 20 people with one dauber, especially if they've never done anything before in terms of
Could
cutting
they do something
invasives.
else at your site? Could they have another task? If you had 20 people, you could designate 6 people to cutting for the dauber, and then you had the other however many to doing, I don't know, English ivy or some other ground cover or something else that you don't need a dauber for.
It's possible, I suppose, some of that, but
It's
anyway, it's
harder.
just a factor I think we should all think about. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate that. Yeah, next is Carrie. Carrie. Hey, Carrie.
Oh, hi. Hey, I think Anastasia answered most of my questions. So if we have like a bunch of curly dock that's mixed in with some natives that we're trying to get established, and I don't know, one answer that Anastasia gave was that wait till the curly dock gets larger. So I don't know, is that a good strategy for that? Just wait and not hit all the little ones that are all kind of intermingled with stuff that we're trying to grow?
So curly dock is not a woody plant.
Oh, is this only about woody plants?
Yes,
I
and
missed
right
the first
now.
15. I missed the first 15 minutes of this.
Oh, it's okay. Oh, gotcha. Yeah. So with the buckthorn blaster, we're asking that people only use the herbicide to treat woody plants
Okay, okay.
because of the high concentration, and that's what it's meant for. But yeah. So,
Will there
but
be
yes,
a
ideally
follow?
you're allowing, because some plants don't even live, the second lives and stuff. And so allowing a plant to grow until it's a bit bigger to then cut it and apply the herbicide then might make more sense, because some may not survive that first year. So yeah.
Okay, okay. And recording will be available for this?
Yes. Oh, and we're already at 12 minutes. How
Okay.
did that happen? It's not okay. Yeah, it will be available. We'll share that to the group and post it on the IMA YouTube page, where the annual appreciation event is also posted.
All
All right,
thank you.
you're welcome. I have Renee. Hi, Renee.
Hello. I was kind of building off of Whitney's question. I've cut, arm-sized ivy before. You can't cut it in a minute. So how do you cut it without a chainsaw so quickly that then you can put poison on it?
That's a good question. So, you mean like because of the timing that it's going to take me more than a minute to cut the
Right.
vine, and so I'm not
Right.
I'm not applying within that
I mean, it
minute.
could take 5 10 minutes. I mean, I've had, you wrestle with it. You have to figure out, like what you said, like you're contorting yourself into where you are. You're trying to get through it all. It can take a long time.
It could. Yeah, I totally get that. So one way to do it is as you're cutting, like let's say you got to take a break. Well, I'm going to dab a little bit of herbicide in there, let the plant start absorbing it. And then I'm going to keep cutting, and then I'm going to apply a little bit more. And then, that's another way, because that timing wise, that's the only thing I can think
easier to
of.
use a droplet bottle in that case? Or I've never used a buckthorn blaster, but it is a dream of mine to have one. So I'm super excited about this.
Yeah,
But
I mean, really,
I have used droplet bottles before.
Yeah, yeah. And so yeah, like a little squirter thing. There's other ones where they have like a little squirt and they just kind of go out. Yeah, those would be, but in this situation, the buckthorn blaster, I've done it before when I'm cutting or doing cut stump treatment or a hack and squirt, just like randomly because I didn't have the tool as needed. I used the buckthorn blaster and you're up against the thing and you're just, as you squirt it, it'll start to leak out, enough, and you're squeezing the plastic bottle, it'll squeeze out enough that the plant will start to, and it'll move, the liquid will move onto the surface of the cut plant. That's my experience, and it has worked.
Awesome. That sounds great. And then I'm guessing the in-person demonstration day will tell us kind of how much to squeeze, when to stop.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Give us an idea of how much. Yeah, exactly. And it also depends on like the sponge tip, and how worn is it and how much pressure you're putting and all that stuff. So yes, it does depend. All right. I have Carol. Walter, do you have a question?
Here. Yes, I do have a question. You've partially answered it already. It has to do with the herbicide. You said you would give us an herbicide that can be used by water. But I wanted to know, what's the distance from a stream that you can use another herbicide that's not supposed to be close to water? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Oh, an herbicide that's not certified for use in aquatic environments?
Yes. Yeah.
I believe it's a good question. So the reason as I think the legal sort of requirement is that it's not in water. So as long as the plant is not in water, you're okay to use that herbicide that's not certified for use in aquatic environments. We all prefer to use herbicides that are used, at least we as in the natural resource branch prefer to use this certified for use in aquatic environments herbicide because the chemical additives in the herbicide mixture are known to be less toxic to amphibians and reptiles.
Okay. Yeah.
But thank you.
Yeah.
And then I have Randy.
Thanks, Patricia. Two things I had a question is, one is, will there be dyes in the buckthorn blasters so that when they're being applied, we're aware of which stumps are, okay. The second question is since glyphosate can be resistant on some of the woody species or is not well received, will triclopyr be available?
Yeah, if you're having problem or that species you're working with glyphosate is not effective on it, please let us know.
I mean, I know it will be at 40%, but the question is, do I want to put 40% if that's a kind of high percentage?
That is the percentage we're providing because of its effectiveness. And yeah. But okay.
Yes.
Let us know if you prefer. We could
a lower. Okay.
We can provide triclopyr, though it is a high concentration triclopyr as well.
It tends to be better. It tends to be better on some of the woody species.
Thank you.
But yep. Thank you.
Melinda?
Hi, I'm sorry. My husband was talking to me right when you started talking about the herbicide application near the water. Is it okay to use a buckthorn blaster on, for example, bush honeysuckle that's right on a stream bank?
On the stream bank, yeah. So what we said was that it's as long as it's not in water.
Okay.
So those, for aquatic pesticide certification, to be able to treat anything in water, you have to have an aquatic herbicide certification, or that category, I should say. And so as long as the plant is not in water, you're not treating water, you're okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. That's a good question. Hi, Whitney.
Oh, maybe I just never took my hand down.
Oh, okay. I thought you had another question.
I'm like, what? I feel like the teacher just called on me and I hadn't studied.
She did have a good question. Sorry, I'm just gonna turn on my microphone. She did have a good question. I don't have any experience using a rasp. Do you, Patricia? I normally just use like a saw to make a fresh cut or a chainsaw. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Thank
Oh,
you.
it was just me being too inventive. I'm sitting there going, well, if the issue is that you want to rough up that surface and get there before it, like, you know, I don't know.
Seals.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Would a rasp, you know, like be effective to just sort of, while you're alternating with the saw, roughing it up with the rasp?
That's a really good question. I wonder
I
how
don't
much
know. I had this
tissue.
thought that was like when I was at my wedding and I was slipping all over the dance floor and somebody handed me some like, scratch it up with a rasp. Okay.
That's so funny. That's a really great idea. And I don't know how much tissue needs to be disturbed on a stump for it to then absorb the chemical and have like broken up the seal. That's a really great question. I would love to have Virginia Tech Extension, some students help us with this type of question. That's a really good point. But yeah, like a recut, like a really skimming of the surface.
Yeah, like, you know, saw. Ooh, my arm's tired. Okay, rasp. Okay, and then, you know.
Yeah. Other times people will cut down, just like take their saw and cut, like let's say it's a trunk that was previously cut and it's been sitting there for a while. You cut down into the plant, you know, you're carving more into it, and then you can dab the chemical into those openings. That's another method too.
You're scoring it, I guess. You're
Scoring it. Thank you. That's, yeah. So yeah, those things can work. That's great. Great questions. Thank you so much, everybody, for your participation today and bringing all these things up. It leads me to believe my PowerPoint presentation needed to have a little bit more information, but this is great. So all the things we need to know. Yes, there's another hand up. That's like 2TN. Go ahead. Who wanted to ask a question?
I think that's Susan.
Oh,
maybe Susan.
I can't hear her. Will there be a printed or online manual of the volunteer herbicide usage? Yes, we're working on a standard operating procedure SOP document. It's in draft form. And we are also working sort of like a cheat sheet that will go along with your spill kit or your bucket that has a lot of the information needed in there. And we, of course, recommend reading the certified registered technician handbook, which you can download or look at online. Any certificate to carry in the field is the question. If you feel that is an important thing to have with you, we could provide that. You're being a volunteer, but I'm a program. That's not something we're required to do with this new law. If you feel like that's something you would like to have from the FCPA, like with the logo or something, I'm happy we could totally create something like that. Oh, Susan's trying to reach. Okay, let me look at my email. Sorry, guys. Sorry, Susan. Sorry, I can't hear you, Susan. I think I could call you. I call you on my phone. All right. I hope to get in touch with you later. Then I can answer some questions. All right. Thank you very much, everybody. Was there any other? Oh, Bill, you had your hand up. Sorry.
Yeah. Will you send an email where we can download the manual you referred to?
Yes, we can send the email. There was something else. I paused because I was thinking there was something else we wanted to send. Oh, the calendar as well, right? The calendar of herbicide use we can send, and also a map.
Yeah, they were interested in the map.
And my other question was, those of us that have been on this online course must also do an in-person program with you. Is that correct? And do we have to sign up for that? And I think at the beginning you mentioned 2 different dates, but that would be held where, at the government center?
There are going to be 2 different locations. Anastasia is going to send out an email with those dates and sign up so that we know how many people will be there, so that we can also provide you the PPE and the bucket with the tools and whatnot for applying herbicide after you attend the in-person training. So
I see.
yes,
And once we've gone through that training as well, is there an exam or something else that we have to take to get certified, or we are actually certified after we go to the in-person training too?
yes, the requirement of training and applying, information that you need to be able to apply herbicide as a volunteer on our parkland would have been met after the in-person training.
Thank you very much.
I actually, just an announcement, I did actually send out the poll for sign up to see which day you're available. If you aren't able to make those days, there is a comment section. Just say you're unavailable and would like to do like a spring in-person training. And I'll just make a note of that. But if you didn't get that email, let me know. I sent it around like 4:30. So just shoot me a text, or you can send me an email if you didn't get it. Or just let me know
Anastasia,
which
to
day.
that point, I tried to do that, but it makes you choose a date before it'll let you make a comment. So that would throw you off because you'd be like, what? She's saying yes and she's saying no.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So I just hit reply
Well,
and
never
you're gonna
mind
get
that.
that email.
I put in
Okay,
my
so,
own date.
Then, yeah, just send me an email. I'm sorry. Just send me an email, and then I'll just make a note, and then we can send out new dates for a later time, because I know people are traveling, things like that. So no worries if you're not able to make the 2 sessions coming up.
And because it's spring on the horizon, it may be pushed, until summer where we can actually practice and do the work, which is ideally what we're going to have you do. One of the sites we want to go to is Oakton Community Park. Of course, we want to support their work there by having everybody do cut some treatment as we get the training. And then the other site we decided on was South Run Rec Center. So of course we can say, hey, let's go out to Alexandria, Gilmacudgeon in the summer, and I'll do training there too.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
I thought that calendar was pretty informative. I'm wondering if it could be updated to include bush honeysuckle, wing-bearing bush.
Species are on there.
Yes, please.
Over information you will see. Too much information on all the species you ever wanted to know about and how to use herbicide. Not that many, but yes. Rita was very
There's never
thorough.
too much information. Thank you.
Welcome. All right, great. Well, if there's no other thing, nobody's itching to say something else. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Yes, thank you.
totally. I've
Um,
never been
Thank you,
so excited
Patricia.
about poison in my life.
Exactly.
Really grateful to all the
All right.
support with the IMO site leaders
Thank
here.
you.
Have a great evening.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Al.
Train me on the 15th, and I'll be out there on the 16th.
Wait, 15th and 16th? Oh, for the volunteer day?
Come on the 15th, and you'll train me, and the next day I'll be in my park.
Oh, yeah, because you'll have everything you need to go. For sure.
It'll still be winter.
Yes, exactly. Take advantage of it.
Yeah. Thank you.
Awesome.
Goodbye.
Bye, Margaret. Thank you. Nice to see you today. Bye, Avril.